Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours. This is where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Cindy Droza from Erie, Colorado is our reader today. So Cindy, let's dive right in. What have we got?
Our first question today is from Douglas Carmichael. Allen and Heath released the next generation Q compact mixers today. What does the panel think?
Alex, do you have an opinion on these?
I don't have a strong opinion. I think that the best thing to do would probably be to ask this one. We don't usually push things off, but we have such a strong audio panel on Wednesdays. I'd probably ask for their opinion on what these look like, especially something that's brand new.
Courtney, you had a thought?
I was just going to take a show that they're in 3 flavors, these new Q mixers. They come in a 5, 6, and a 7D with 16, 24, and 32 inputs respectively, but it looks like they've just gone a little more compact, and it has remote control apps that you can run on your phone, and in your iPad, MixPad, so that looks interesting. I haven't had a chance to really evaluate all of I'm not sure if they're Dante compatible, maybe they are, but I'll have to do a little more research before we find out, or find somebody who's actually used them, since they're brand new, just announced.
Yeah, normally they seed a few influencers with early models of things, but I haven't seen anything out there, but maybe it's just a little bit early for that. Next question.
Here's Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York asking, "Morning, everyone. I have a virtual presentation coming up. The host organization is utilizing the Google Meet platform. Having not studied it for a while, are there any gotchas the panel would recommend to keep an eye out for?"
Alex, what do you think of it?
Well, you can't use you need to use screen share if you want to show anything, because you're not going to get a 1080p out of it. It's only 720p. It does a lot of weird things with the windows, so you're not going to see 16 by 9. It is, so you don't really know what other people are seeing. That's the hard part, is that it's constantly making these adjustments. While Zoom shows you everything that you're going to get, you really, if you want to show anything, you really have to use the screen share for it. You can't just cut to it. So if you're doing a virtual presentation, just know that you probably are going to have to use screen share. There's a way to loop that, where basically what I do is, if I need to do a screen share and I really want to use my telestrator and my switcher and everything else, I will open up QuickTime, and then I will tell QuickTime, make a new movie, and make the switcher what QuickTime sees. And then I make it pretty big, and then I capture that window as the screen share. Now I have my switcher and everything else. Sync's a little off, so you got to be careful of your audio. But as far as a screen share goes, if you want a high resolution screen share, as well as being able to do any of the switching or anything else that you might want to do, you can do that. But it will throw off the sync. Although with Google Meet, I don't know how you'd know.
Fair enough. There's some tips for you. Hopefully, Mike, that helped you. Next question.
This one comes to us through the QR code from Curtis Perrin in Newfoundland, Canada. What would be a recommended Mac Mini version to either just run Zoom OSC in meetings and or to build a ZoomISO with decklink cards in a box now into 2025?
Jason Bache is going to start us off here. Jason?
So my answer for both is pretty much going to be the same. The current M4 Mini is just an unbelievably powerful machine. If you're going to be running PCIe, of course, I would bump up to full Thunderbolt 5 on all ports, but I don't think it's actually technically necessary. And as far as the enclosure, I like the Mercury Helos from OWC. The 3S is 249. Panel favorite for a long time has been Sonnet Tech, which is this guy. And basically anything in that product line is going to do you just fine for those constraints.
Alex?
Yeah, if you're getting the Sonnet, make sure to get the SE1, not the SEL. They look almost identical. The prices are the same, but the SEL is too short for your so you need an SE1 to connect to it. I do agree with Jason that the M4 is all you need. This show is running on the base version of M1s. So this is many, 4 years ago or 3 years ago what we bought. So this is that's what this is running on, and it can run 8 outputs without any trouble. I'm sure that the M4 could run at least 8, probably 16 out. And I would be surprised if the M4 ran over 50%. We haven't tested it head to head, but I'd be surprised if it went over 50% running 16 1080p outputs from Zoom if you had high bandwidth mode on.
Hopefully that helped you, Curtis. Next question.
Luke in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, coming in through the QR code. There is a movie theater that I frequent, and I want to try and help them improve their surround sound. The front channels, dialogue, are usually easy to hear, but the other 6 speakers seem to be muffled and or quiet. How can I help them?
Alex, you have a thought?
Yeah, so there's a couple questions there. One is when you say the front channels, is that the center channel? So typically in most of these theaters, you're talking about 5.1. So there's going to be an LFE that's down below. You're going to have a center channel. You have right, left, and then you have the front right and front left, and then you have the rear right and rear left. And it may have double surrounds. So the left surround, right surround might have 2 of those, depending on the amp. So if you really want to help them, the first thing you're going to have to understand is what do they actually have? And so there's a couple things that you want to look at there. You have a projector. Are they using a Sony, a Christie, or Barco? Those are the big 3. So they're going to have one of those. If they're using a Sony, you may find that audio is difficult. Christie's, it depends. There's a couple different cards that can go into them. The IMB 4K may have some video problems if you're doing tests from an external device. But if they're using, you want to find out if it's an older theater, they may be using like a Do-Re-Mi delivery device. And so you got to figure that out too. The audio device is really what you want to look at. So the QSC and Dolby are the ones that make most of these. And so Dolby, if you're looking there, you're looking for a 650, 750, 850, or 950. The 950s being obviously the most modern, the 650s being very difficult to work with, and the 750s are and 850s are kind of in between as far as how you integrate with those devices to make it better. Also, the other side is QSC. They make a DCP 100, 200, and 300, as well as a DPM 100H, I think is the other one, is the newer one. Or one of the newer ones. And so these are all things, but you want to look at what they're doing there. How many amps do they have? A lot of QSC amps are kind of oftentimes in there. So how many amps are they doing? What is the audio processor? And kind of figure that out first. The second thing you want to do after you figure out what's actually there, if they're willing to let you look at all of that, take pictures of it, bring it back to us, because a couple of us know a couple things about the theater pipeline. But let us know what that pipeline looks like, and then we can start to give you a sense of what to do. One of the things you'll probably end up doing is doing a variety of test signals. The first thing you'll do is run test signals that just call out the channels, left, right, center, and then LFE is usually noise, and then the left surround, right surround. And that'll give you a sense of, are the speakers actually working at all? And if you hear a big change in their volume, then you know things are off as well. And then you can start to do pink noise, which will let you kind of gauge what is actually happening in each speaker to make that work. So those are some of the things you'd want to do. You first want to analyze it and figure out where you are. And then from that point, you can start to figure out, bring that back to us. And then from that point, we can start to help you figure out where to go.
Courtney?
Yeah, Alex covered it all. The only thing I could suggest is look up Tomlinson Holman and have him come over and invite him to a movie at your theater.
That would be very, very nice of you. Also, I'm assuming that you're on somehow the theater staff or something involved and know somebody in there. You may run across problems that most people in businesses do not let outsiders come in and mess with things just because of insurance regulations and or the potential that somebody is going to come in, make changes to a system and not document it properly, and they'll have all sorts of trouble if you are not available to help them fix things that go wrong in the future. So just understand there's also the etiquette of working with a business. But if this is a company that you're involved with and they know who you are, then you've gotten some extraordinarily good advice here today, and hopefully it'll help you solve the problem. Alex, you had another thought you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, if it's a small theater, you'd be surprised at how flexible people are. so like
okay, good point.
Like if you tell them like, hey, it depends on what your background is. I mean, if they say, I do audio video and your speakers are really bad, I'm not going to touch anything, but I'd love to see what you're doing there. Maybe we can help. I mean, you may have to make friends with the manager or the owner, especially if it's a small one. You're not going to be able to get into like an AMC. They're not going to be interested.
That's what I was thinking.
But if you're talking about like a local theater, local movie theater that owns a handful of theaters, not many of those left. You may be able to find some flexibility in that area.
Yeah, in fact, it's very difficult. I was looking at the local theater that is equivalent to, I grew up in near Tempe, Arizona, and there's a place called the Valley Art that's been going there forever. It does Rocky Horror and the rest of those things. It's the traditional little community solo theater. There, all bets are off. But boy, as I've looked around, even the smaller chains, and we have an Angelica near us, I looked and they have like 15 across the country. And so those are the ones where they're a little more tied down, and they have to go to corporate and get permission to have somebody mess with things. But anyway,
and if you're,
good luck.
If it looks like the one that you most likely have there is Micon, M-I-C-O-N, Micon Cinemas, and if it's Micon Cinemas, they only have like 4. So you should be able to. That's a small business. You do have to figure out who owns it. So you might want to do a little bit of research to talk to them. It won't be so much talking to the manager, but sometimes these things take a little time.
Yeah. Jason, you wanted to sneak back in on this?
Yeah, for regional theaters, in my experience, so if they've got 4 theaters, either the business office is in like their first founding theater, or they just have this separate, unsigned, unknown, just ask the manager, like, where's your business office? And, that's really where you need to drop in.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. Next question.
Next up is Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Which, if any, bone conduction headsets have a place in professional media production?
And we have panelists who have experience in this. Courtney Gooden, what's your opinion?
Probably very few in professional media production for home, because they're Bluetooth. And, the Aftershocks OpenCom 2 are nice. But, unless, these days, I guess everybody has the apps that run on their phone, and then you can use the Bluetooth connection, the OpenComs too. So I guess it's not that unusual. But a lot of systems that you're going to have to tie into maybe wired systems, 5-wire systems that are RTX or the other one I can't remember.
You know what they say? You know what they say, Courtney? They say if you're from trucks, you use RTS. If you're from events, you use ClearCom, and if you're from money, you use Riedel.
Jason Beige. Oh, Courtney, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm cool.
How do I top that, Alex? It's true on all counts. Yeah, I mean, I use the Shocks OpenCom 2 quite a bit in real production, and I wouldn't use it for voiceover, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work beautifully as an easy way to connect not one but 2 things simultaneously to it, and switching between the 2 is very easy, and of course it lets you leave your ears open, and the battery life actually will work reasonably all day.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I have to say that for most things that I'm on smaller events. On larger events, we end up using wired headsets, and they're wireless, Free Speaks or Bolero, and they're all wired to a belt pack to the side. Most of the smaller events that I work on, or ones that are in our office or whatever, it's pretty common for me to use the open comms there, and I'm now using the ones with USB-C, which is very exciting because I constantly am losing the cables for the old one. Now, what I will say is that in production, I have 3 of them. So I have 3 of them that I kind of work my way through, charging and doing other things like that. And we use them pretty often, mostly just because I'm moving around a lot, and it just doesn't, oftentimes we don't have the budget to necessarily give everybody a free speak. So that's usually the challenge. And with things like Unity and ClearCom, we have been pretty successful at it. I would say that, again, you can't do this with only one of them. You have to have 2 or 3 of them so that you can have 1 charging or 2 charging and keep that one going. But I have found that to be pretty successful, again, on smaller events. On the ones that are big, there's a lot of money involved. Usually we have the budget to have free speaks, and that's what we use.
Don't forget, we're always taking your questions. In fact, so that's what really drives our entire show. You can not only ask questions, but you can chat about them if you get into our Makana system. That's the back-end Q&A processing engine behind the show. So go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email within a day or 2. And once you've done that, you can kind of register and then ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions. There's a community in real time that has a lot of chat and actually adds a lot of information that's very valuable to the questions and answers we do here every day. So if you want to do that, again, go to officehours.global/join, and that'll get you into the system. Next question.
Our next one is from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Adding an AV receiver to incorporate more than 4 HDMI sources to my TV will add too much complexity for some of my family members. What are some other options?
Jason Bache can help.
Last week, I pulled a $30,000 receiver out of a client's house for exactly that reason. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways to simplify this. The easiest one that comes to mind is monoprice Blackbird. If you just get a 4-in, 1-out switcher, it does come with a really dinky remote. If you spend a little bit of time and program that dinky remote into the multi-remote that you have, I think you'll have pretty good luck with that. And that way it's only one input on the TV and away you go.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, I'm in the same situation. I have a nice Yamaha 645, I think, AV receiver with a 7.1 surround system. And I think I've listened to it with a movie maybe once 3 years ago and then a few times before that. But these days with streaming the way it is, I have all my TVs now in the house connected over to networks. And I just use a Tableau TV for the tuning and DVR for the local channels, of which the Tableau will receive 156 channels in Los Angeles. And it can, I have a 2 terabyte disk hooked up to it, so it can record anything that I can schedule coming into any of the network programming. And then, of course, I have YouTube TV. So I usually just have one thing hooked up to my TV, and that's a Fire TV streaming device, and everything else comes in over the network, including the Yamaha. The Yamaha hooks in with the ability to access. I've got, my music library plugged into the Yamaha via USB port. It always comes on. So I have access to all that music over the network that is hosted by the Yamaha. So it just appears in your, extra things for in the Fire TV player. So these days, I never use my HDMI switcher, and I haven't plugged a Blu-ray into my Blu-ray player in, gosh, I don't know how long.
Alex Lynn?
Yeah. I would say that if you think it's too complex for them to use the AV receiver, you should really, I guess I would be questioning whether they should have more than one source of media. In my family, there's not really any, you have the AV receiver that's going to deliver all the things you want to all the places that you want it, the 7.1 or whatever. I have a 7.1 system in my house with a TV. I have an AV receiver that's capable, I think, of 5 and I think I have things plugged into all 5 of the HDMIs. But I can't remember the last time we changed the state from Apple TV to something else. like everything sits inside of our Apple TV, all of our services, everything else. That's the only thing I'm really willing to let talk to the internet. So that's part of the deal, is that I just, from a security perspective, I don't really want my TV to talk to the internet. So it can talk to the internet. I just don't give it the access. So I would think about simplifying their media habit down to one device, whether that's a Roku or a Google Chromecast or a Apple TV. I would think about just making it easier for them by giving them only one thing, and the TV just becomes a monitor.
Hopefully that helped, Pedro. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, Courtney, did you provide the monitors used on film sets or just the graphics seen on screens? How has this technology improved?
Courtney, what say you?
Yes, and the technology has improved. When I started doing this in the late 80s, early 90s, everything was on cathode ray tubes. This was before LCDs were around. And everything was being shot on films because there weren't high-resolution digital cameras being used very much. And so it was a black art of synchronizing the shutter of the film camera rolling at 24 frames per second to the video on a CRT that is running at 30 or 29.97 frames per second. So that was a healthy income for me, doing commercials and television shows and mainly television commercials and a few theatrical films for a long time. And then that job just kind of disappeared. And in those cases, I did the graphics, I showed up on the set, I ran the graphics, I synchronized the camera shutters to the CRT tubes, I gen-locked all the computers. We would do scenes with like a brokerage firm with 75 screens in them, and I would have to provide gen-locked images to those 75 screens, and that was a big deal. But as things progressed, LCD monitors came around and digital cameras that have variable speed shutters that instead of a rolling shutter would have a global shutter that can capture the entire image at one point in time. So you don't have the problem of the scan lines going down or the flicker, because the different frame rates of the refresh of the monitor and the refresh of the camera. So on some shows, we would send the graphics to a separate company that would do animations. Symbiont did the animations on Dexter, and I was just on set synchronizing the camera to the video monitors and making sure they were all color balanced and adjusted properly. And then I would run the animations on the screens that were given to us by the art department. Art department would lay out screens, for example, on Dexter, all the web pages that are supposed to appear, or newspaper articles, or whatever they were showing besides live video. And they would give that to post-production. They would edit it. They would give it to me, and I would play it back on the set. Symbiont would do the animation between them. But I, at one time, did all of those things, and on several situations on several shows, I did all of those things, created the graphics, operated them on set, and synchronized the cameras. And I had to provide the monitors, because CRT monitors normally don't run at 24 frames per second. You have to go in and modify the electronics to run at 24 frames per second, and you have to modify computers to gen-lock together and run at 24 frames per second.
Alex?
See, I just thought I'd show Courtney there's an iMac there, runs at 24 frames a second.
Is it mine? I modified my iMacs to run.
It came out of ILM.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway,
you had to run them at 600 by 800.
It's amazing the level of expertise about all the most arcane parts of this production world that we can tap into here in Office
Marty
Hours.
Brennis did that modification. I bet you anything.
he did.
See?
It's a Marty Brennis special.
Small community. Next question.
Next one is from Mathieu Lacount in Oakland. Got a MeLE Oveclock4c, 32 gigabytes RAM, 512 gigabytes storage, CPU pins when running Zoom, and Zoom won't go higher res than 640 by 360. Courtney?
And Courtney's right back with us. Courtney?
Well, here's the problem. Zoom refuses to use the GPU on Windows PCs. They use the CPU for doing everything. They use the GPU because in all of those MeLE 4Cs is a Intel quad-core CPU, but they all have H.264 and H.265 encode and decode on all the chips. If Zoom would take the time and write drivers for them, they could go at a higher resolution. But right now, they lock it out because they're still doing everything, making the CPU process all the scaling and decoding. So get you, if you want a small computer that Zoom will let you go higher resolution with, then you can get, Minis Forum has a bunch of Ryzens. Get a Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 9 mini PC that has 8 cores in it that'll be able to process the stuff, and they will unlock the HD little checkbox in Zoom and let you run at a higher resolution. And the Ryzen 7s and 9s can handle it, and they're small footprint, although they do have fans.
Alex?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for a company like Zoom is when you have tens or hundreds of millions of people using it, even a small percentage of people having trouble causes a lot of trouble. It's a lot of calls. And so I think that I will say that I'd push back a little bit on their not taking the time to do it. The one thing I know about the team that builds those is they do the best they can with that. I think part of the problem with PCs is that there's just so many versions. As someone who developed a Mac version and a PC version of a software, we had so many configurations for PCs that we had to support that we eventually ended up first limiting the number of PCs. We would just tell you these are the only 4 configurations that we support. And then we just ended up people would complain about the fact that we only supported 4 configurations, and then we just canceled the PC version because it was 10% of our revenue and 90% of our problems. And so I will say that it's hard. It's just really much harder to support PCs than Macs because they're much wider set of configurations that you have to try to figure out, and it just becomes especially at the scale that Zoom's working at, it becomes a very hard math problem.
Don't forget, we are doing some additional shows on different nights. And if you're interested in the programming that we have here at Office Hours, Extra Hours happens on Mondays for those around the world. So that takes place tonight. Grant Whitehead out of Australia. The great thing about this is that it's time shifted, essentially almost 12 out of 24 hours ahead, which means that if this is an inconvenient time for you every morning, you might find an easier schedule with Extra Hours. Tuesday, we've been doing special shows. We don't have one this week, but Thursday, the rundown happens every week. David Paskin hosts a panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind technology currently, and these are just some of the things we're developing so that you have other options to watch things. That's here on Office Hours. Next question.
Roscoe Jones is here with us in Madison, Indiana. Would you consider using an LED wall for a 2-person narrative scene with a master shot and 2 over-the-shoulder shots? No visual effects, but just computer-generated imagery backgrounds in 16th century Ireland.
Ooh, that sounds really interesting, Alex.
Yeah, you could. I mean, I think here's what you'd have to do is that, if you have a flat LED, I think that if you have an LED wall, so the problem really is that how much wall do you have and how much power do you have and how much money do you have to do this? LEDs, if you really want to do it where if you have 2 people talking, here, and then you have your cameras, you're going to have a master shot that's going to be here, and then you're going to have over the shoulder on that side. And so those are the things that you're there. Now, the issue is that you're going to have the LED. If you have a flat LED, you're not going to be able to basically, this shot and this shot will have to be picked up separately. So if it's only one flat wall, you'll have to do this in 3 shots, so that you're not going to capture it all at one time. What you're going to do is you'll do your first wide shot against that background. And then you're going to, then the next thing you'll do is you'll end up taking, the 2 people like this and having your wall back here. And then you're going to shoot this background. So you'll end up doing the scene 3 times. Is the only way you're going to be able to use that wall, because otherwise you won't be able to get over the shoulder and still see the wall. So each one of those you'll rotate. Now the nice thing is that if you're using because you're in Unreal or something like that, you can just rotate the scene and kind of move it around to be just what you want. So I'd be really interested in doing that. In fact, we ought to see if you have one, then go ahead and try that. Otherwise, it'd be fun to have Nick Justishin up at Drexel. Maybe they have some time on their thing, and we can do some kind of interaction back and forth.
Yeah, it's fascinating. When we were at NAB or Cinegear, we saw a lot of companies who are doing these LED wall arrays, and the geometry of them I find absolutely fascinating. We did one walkthrough where they had a wall, and the young lady was doing essentially climbing pantomime while flat on the floor, and because the perspective of the LED wall behind her shifted to a canyon-type scene, it really looked like she was literally climbing a wall, although she was on the ground.
And in this case, I don't even think you'd have to do any kind of stretching. You would just simply rotate that scene. You wouldn't have to do any stretching on the LED. The LED would sit up there, and you would just simply rotate the scene over so that you would see the correct.
What was impressive to me about that demo, though, was that they literally changed scenes. And she popped up, and within 3 seconds, they were doing a front-on shot where it didn't look like it looked like the camera was over her shoulder rather than above her, looking down at her, clinging to the wall. So the huge production savings of being able to essentially switch completely setups in 2 seconds just because you reprogram the wall and the same camera gets a wholly new perspective was fascinating. What Alex is describing. Oh, go ahead.
Mickey points out also that you just have to take lighting into account. So you're going to want to have DMX control over that lighting and or just know what you're going to do. But remember that whatever lighting you had on one, it's going to, if you turn them, you got to match that lighting for each one of those.
Even shooting against physical sites, we used to have the problem that Alex described earlier. If it's a flat surface, your crossing shots never get the end, and that's why curved sites exist. You can do that sometimes if you have a curved site behind people, but not flat. Anyway, interesting question, Roscoe. Next question.
Our next question is from Funsak Dorji. Hi, panelists. We are planning to buy a 2ME Constellation HD. Should we go for Blackmagic Design's Web Encoder or Ultra Encode All-in-One from Magewell? Thanks.
Alex?
If you're buying the new 2ME Constellation, it does have streaming built into it. I don't think it's going to be any different quality than the Web Encoder, but I would recommend the Ultra Encode from Magewell. Get a dedicated system for it. One thing that I'd like to do is I'm going to try to get a hold of a couple more encoders, and we'll start doing some actual tests of encoding, different encoding qualities. Like, so basically take a let's say 1080p and say at 6 megs a second, this is what it looks like. And then compare that to the original footage and kind of work through these different encoders at the same bit rate and see what they actually, how they compare to each other. So we'll start, I'm working on putting that together with a handful of encoders that I have now, and we'll see if we can produce it. But I do think that I would, I don't have a ton of confidence in there's a lot of things about Blackmagic that I use. The encoders are not one of them.
By the way, we continue through your questions as long as we have them. And don't forget, if you want to put a question in, the quickest way to do that is to use the askofficehours.global QR code. I think I have. Do I have that set up in my bus? No, I don't. Hang on a second. I'll do a couple little things. And now I can toss up.
I just have to ask. I think, Bill, I think you're out of sync. But
I'm out of sync?
You talked so fast there for a second.
That was an awesome buffer. That
was an amazing buffer recovery by it. It was. Yeah, there's been a couple little glitches on your side, Bill, but just so that our audience knows that we see it too. But there was a couple little glitches, but that was, remember the guy from FedEx? You know,
Pat Machida.
I think you might have passed him. I think you might have passed him there.
That was Micro Machines guy. That was awesome.
It wasn't, but there wasn't a glitch. It just sped you up and brought you back in. I think we're back to normal now. But that was a great effect. You might want to do that.
There have been Spectrum trucks in the neighborhood for the last 2 days, so they may be fiddling with something.
I'm so surprised Spectrum's having bandwidth problems. Shocked.
Well, I'm my finger is crossed that they're putting in fiber or something like that. I don't know. I know actually they are running fiber lines into a part of the golf course over there for some big event or something like that. So there have been technicians in our neighborhood for the past 3 weeks getting ready for whatever they're doing over there. Anyway, I was talking about askofficehours.global because if you want the quickest and easiest way to get a question into the queue, this QR code down here, you can just shoot it with your phone or something like that. It instantly gets you to the Ask Office Hours system. You can put questions in really quickly. They'll go to the back-end crew. They'll vet them just to make sure that they're formed correctly, and then we're off and running. Jason, you had some thoughts about the last thing?
Yeah, as a proud owner of every web presenter that Blackmagic has ever made, and of course, that is just the web encoder. They've changed the names of them. It's a really beautiful interface, and it's not a very stable encoder. Like, I hate to admit it, but it's just true.
Well, sometimes you get that. Next question.
Mike Beardmore in Bedford, UK is asking, a 2-person video podcast show producer is looking to recruit a video editor to increase his output. How should he evaluate applicants from U.S. and abroad?
Alex, your thoughts?
Well, obviously, you want to see what they've done in the past. Have they done podcasts? Have they done edits? Have they done any of these things? It's an unknown. So that's the thing to look at. So show us what you've done previously. I'd start to ask them, what software they use. I'd ask them what their approach is. It's not really about the approach. It's about how they describe the approach. So like, what is the, what are they, like they'll talk about what you want to hear is their thought process of how they approach it. Like if they say, oh, well, I do and think about whether it is an organized approach or not. And then you want to see it. I mean, podcast edits can be pretty straightforward. As far as improving output, just remember that things like Resolve now has an auto editor, and when you have the audio for both people, you can actually tell it to just go. It's just gonna edit the whole thing for you. You may want to look at that and find tweaks to things as opposed to hiring another person if it's just basic two-person talking to each other. But if you're looking for something more creative, then you're going to start, because you can find people that are relatively inexpensive that can just do the same thing that Resolve does. But the question is, if someone's going to get creative and start bouncing around and really making decisions, it is and there's some people that just have a natural knack for it. My son just did about 5 hours of editing on some plays that we shot together. And it's his first edit longer than 5 minutes, and it was exceptional, and you can just tell when someone just has an eye for it, and it was interesting. He said, this is the kind of thing you want to hear. He said, well, the band played a lot, and I got a kind of a tempo from the band that I just kind of used when I, when in doubt of where to go, when to cut, I'd cut into that process, because it was two musicals. And just that thought process is the kind of thing you want to hear of what they're thinking.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana is asking, if film is a director's medium and stage is an actor's medium and television is a writer's medium, then who gets virtual reality?
Great formed question, Roscoe. Courtney, what are your thoughts?
ChatGPT gets to write all the stuff for the virtual reality stuff.
I would...
Yeah. Sorry.
I would answer that and say virtual reality is a dreamer's medium, because it's the one thing where you can create anything if you have the chops and the time and the budget for it. But it's a great question, Ross.
Also, virtual reality, it hasn't gone very far. It's a very small niche, especially augmented reality is an even smaller niche. And virtual reality has been around for 20, 25 years or so. Since computer-generated imagery was, Jim Blinn did some back in the 80s. It's been around a long time, and I don't see it taking off very much because it requires so much attention, and it requires, it's an individual viewing experience as opposed to a communal viewing experience, which, everything else is theater, television, and regular television and film. So I guess it's up for grabs. Anybody who wants to delve into that small market is welcome to, but it doesn't attract a lot of large directors and a lot of high-end writers because of its limited market.
Alex?
Yeah, for the first 20 years, television was a really small market. I mean, from 1926 to 1946, they didn't even mass produce them. They just kind of made them, I think, by hand. So they, it took a long time for television to pick up 20
years.
It did. The first TV was 1926, and the first mass produced one, I believe, was 1946. So there was 20 years in between where they were kind of cobbling together.
And yeah.
We were still, it was still the small screen for a long time. So these things take time. I think it's hard to tell, when the car came out, there was a lot of people that were like, hey, you can't go where the horse goes, it breaks down all the time. There's a whole bunch of complaints about what that looked like. There was a bunch of crazy kids out there with these motorized wagons, that they're going around. And so I think that we're kind of in that mode. For those of us who have, I think the top of the line commercial version right now is, the Apple Vision Pro. It's an awful lot to it. What's missing right now is exactly what Courtney said, the content, people producing the content. And a lot of that has to do with tools, which are starting to come up to speed. As someone who's seen stuff that's higher quality than what the Apple Vision Pro provides, that isn't commercially available, it's amazing. Like when you start cresting over 10K per eye and 120 frames a second, you start getting into it's pretty addicting. The Apple Vision Pro is kind of minimum viable product in my opinion. I think when you go down to where the Meta Quest is, you're not going to be that excited about it because it's all, it's just what it is, And so I think that, you have to have some vision in looking at not where it is, but where it's going. And I think that most likely we'll see a lot more. And the disadvantage right now is that there's not a lot of business, and it's hard, and you have to figure it out. The advantage is that they always say that when you plant it, I don't know what they say, but when you plant a tree, it's pretty useless for the first 10 years. And so when you think about where you're going to plant things, I think there's a pretty good opportunity for virtual reality somewhere in the future, but it's not going to be right. Right now you're getting the roots in, you're figuring it out, you're being in that process, and that's the advantage of being the first mover.
Courtney, you had one comeback?
Yeah, in respect to your question, Roscoe, if film is director's medium and stage is the actor's medium and television is the writer's medium, virtual reality is the viewer's medium because the viewer controls the narrative. Since it's virtual reality, and this is why it's been so hard to deliver any kind of dramatic programming in virtual reality, because the viewer is controlling the narrative. And I remember a demonstration of a dramatic piece. I was working for a company that's now out of business that created virtual reality stuff and did volumetric video capture and incorporated it into digital backgrounds. And they had a little dramatic piece, and they let me try it out in their studios. And the problem with it is, since the viewer controls the viewpoint all the time, it's very hard to control the narrative. If you're trying to get, if something's happening that you need to be paying attention to you and it's behind you, you have to draw attention to it with audio cues or something to get the person to turn their head and look at who's talking, or look at look, there's a car approaching in the distance in the desert. Well, in virtual reality, in regular editing, and you can draw attention to it by cutting to it. But in virtual reality, you have to draw the person's attention into the narrative. And that's very difficult to do in a virtual reality. They may be looking at the silverware on the table and the silent cues that the actor is giving you by their reaction on their faces. So it's very tough. So that particular media lends itself to documentaries, scenic travel logs, or places where the viewer wants to explore the area on their own, and you let them using virtual reality, and you just move them from point to point, and they get to look around and discover what's around them. So I don't see it ever taking off in any kind of scripted type of entertainment.
Alex?
Yeah, we've actually done some scripted stuff for virtual reality, and the thing is that it doesn't lend itself to the old-fashioned idea of linear storytelling. So what we've done is what we basically produced are very short pieces that people would typically watch for a long time because they're trying to figure out what happened. So basically they're watching something and then something happens. All the pieces are there in what's around them in 360 degrees, but they might have to look for a while to figure out what happened, and how that, there are things that built up and things that happened. And so you find yourself exploring that space. It's still scripted, it's still planned, but it's an exploration of a narrative as opposed to a linear narrative. And it's very hard to get directors to think about that because they went to a bunch of schools and they've made a bunch of movies in an old way, and thinking of a new way to do that is complicated for them. And so we found that we had to kind of work with folks that hadn't done it before because it was really hard to get the folks who had to it's a little bit of a new wine and old wineskin problem.
I wonder if that's going to change as all the RPGs, the role-playing games that so many kids are involved with, have multiple points of view running simultaneously actually one for every player. So,
I think Robo Recall on MetaQuest is still the best RPG and not role playing. I'm sorry, first person shooter. There, but I think that there's a lot of places in role playing that being able to stand there in it. You may be able to zoom out, zoom back in, be able to be in the experience. Would be kind of cool. I think that in a certain battle or a certain bit of it, being able to stand somewhere that's much more interesting. I think that there's a lot to unwrap there.
Absolutely. During the castle siege, where do you want to be? Do you want to be on the battlements with the cannoneers, or do you want to be in the melee, or where? It'd be a fascinating thing to program. Let's go to our next question.
This one's from me, Cindy Drozda in Erie, Colorado. For any of you who use network-attached storage, do you use RAID arrays in it? If so, which types of RAID do you like?
Jason Bass is going to start us out here. Jason?
So although there are single and double disk NAS drives, most of them are not very performant. So I'm going to operate under the assumption that basically all serious NAS drives end up with some form of RAID, which is a redundant array of inexpensive or independent disks, depending upon who you talk to. The one that I have is a Synology RAID. I use their SHR because it's a nice mix of performance and fault tolerance. RAIDs go from RAID 0 to RAID 10, and it's very well documented. So in general, you really should just go with the flow. RAID 0 splits it. RAID 1 is redundant, and then they get more and more complicated with a combination of fault tolerances and speed optimizations therein.
Alex Lindsay.
My go-to for this is RAID 5. So you'll be able to pull a drive. You'll be able to lose one drive and be able to replace it. So that tends to be the one that I use for most RAIDs if I'm setting it up.
Courtney?
Well, I don't use RAID at all because these days I don't do any media production. So if you're doing media production where it requires fast access to large files, then go the Alex route, the RAID 5, because it's fault tolerant and you can replace one of the drives if they go bad. But spinning drives, these days with NVMe drives are fast enough to deliver any kind of media that you need and off of a single drive. So you don't have the problem of, one of the drives dropping out and hosing all of your media until it's rebuilt if it's not RAID 5, or hosing it all forever if it's striped, in other words, to speed up access. But yeah, the NVMe drives, you can get 4 terabyte NVMEs and put them in and give you plenty of storage, and also avail yourself of RAID these days. But I just use a single NVMe drive as backup. I don't have more than, half a terabyte of data that I need to keep and have access to any of my computers at one time. So I'm kind of different than the editorial person or the person who is editing a lot of media or has multiple people trying to access that NAS at the same time to access the media that's on it.
Let's go to our next question. Ooh.
Next we have Alex Lindsay in Novato, California, USA, and here on the panel today. I bought a new box.
Show and tell time. What do you got, Alex?
It's not a very big box. Oftentimes, it's not it's the little things in life. So one of the problems that I had was that I want to use something for reference, for teaching or for doing a breakdown or something like that comes from something that is protected by DHCP, which is annoying. And so I need something that's going to be able to handshake with a DHCP and then deliver something without DHCP so that I can record it. And so I was trying to find the cheapest solution for this. And so I ordered this and tested it, and it works fine. It's a little tweaky with the audio, which I don't really care about, so it doesn't really matter. But this is a little micro converter. So this is it doesn't really the brand I think is here. I'll show you what I bought here. Let's see if I can.
And for those who might not know, DHCP is copy protection. Basically,
yeah.
It's what keeps you from making a copy of something.
So this is the $39 is what I paid, and it's made by I don't even think if I say it, it'll sound bad, but SHUITING. And so I meant to say HDCP if I said DHCP, I meant to say HDCP. And so anyway, it will not say the key is the reason you have to buy these. HDCP is not DHCP is something else. Sorry, I apologize. It's early in the morning. The HDCP, the problem is they'll never tell you that on Amazon because then someone will go after them. So you have to kind of go, well, like let's test, let's buy one and test it.
The lines.
And so they don't say it anywhere. So I just bought it and I figured I'll send it back if it doesn't work. But it converts. The issue is that it converts HDMI, so it has that handshake. But it goes to SDI. SDI does not have HDCP, so there's no way for it to convert. If it converts a signal from HDMI to SDI, it works. So then all I have to do is convert it back to HDMI and plug it into my switcher. And that way, if I'm cutting to something, in the show, or if I'm talking about something, or I want to get little clips that I want to look at, So, and it was specifically because I wanted a meme from the reason that this was driven, I know this sounds crazy, but I wanted a meme from a movie, and all the video versions of it on the web are not very good. And I was like, I can do better. So off I went. So anyway, I'll show you all the meme at some point in the future too.
Sometimes desire is the mother of invention.
Yeah, exactly.
Courtney,
I'm fixing this.
Courtney?
Yeah, I was just going to say almost all boxes that convert from HDMI to SDI strip HDCP because they have to, because like you said,
the Black Magics don't. The Black
they
Magic
just black out.
Yeah, they just black out. So it's a lot of them. I find that a lot of the more expensive ones don't do it because they don't want to. They want to be in good graces with all the companies that that are they're mostly aimed at entertainment. The ones that work reliably are the ones that I find that work reliably are specifically the cheap Chinese ones.
Yeah, and I found several of the splitters where you don't have to go to SDI in order to strip it, but some of the cheap splitters, like you say, from China, you got to kind of go to the forums and find out which ones actually do strip the HDCP from the inputs to go from 1 to 2. I will do it. And also some of the recorders, H.264 recorders, the ones that the ClearClick ones they say in the thing that it will not play HDCP or will not record HDCP encoding. But what they don't tell you is on some of them, if you hold down the record button for 10 seconds, it turns it off. So out of the box, no, they're right. It doesn't record HDCP encoded material, but sometimes there's a secret switch that you can turn on that will let it do it. But they never advertise that, and you have to go to the forums to find the ones that have that secret switch or just don't support it at all. And the problem is the HDMI Alliance, the people that control the branding, the use of the HDMI logo, require you to support HDCP. So that's the Motion Picture Alliance got that pushed through into the EIAJ, which is the Electronic Engineering Alliance of Manufacturers. And so that was pushed through many years ago. So in order to have the HDMI symbol on your product, you have to, adhere to their requirements, but some of them cheap.
Hey, if you value what we do here, don't forget there are a few ways you can help. And basically, the three are volunteering. You can become a part of the team, or you can donate directly if you'd like to. We are a 501c3. So the answer to those all is to go to officehours.global/donate if you'd like to help out. Next question.
Brody Hefner in New York City is asking, after reading the obituary last week of the NASA engineer who saved the Apollo 13 astronauts with duct tape engineering, I wonder if the panelists have seen examples of high-stakes productions rescued by creative problem-solving.
Courtney?
Now, I got a chance to do this once on a McDonald's commercial. And I was just there as a teleprompter operator. So I had a teleprompter set up. No, I was the sound recordist, but I still had the teleprompting company. So we were recording, and it was the Ronald McDonald, and it was called the Red Shoes or something. And it involved motion control and compositing of these red shoes that did this dance, and they were going to have to. We had an Image G motion control rig that was tracking the action, and then we were going to repeat it with the person in a green screen suit and just the shoes on, and track the camera move and everything so they could all be composited together. Well, we had video assist there, so to show the composite to help line things up on the post-production. But the problem is when it was the old analog days of video assist, and the video signal, which ran to the camera on the end of the motion control arm, they were using AC servos on this giant motion control arm, and it generated so much RF hash that it would just obliterate the video signal so much from the camera that you could not record a stable image coming out of it. So my solution was the image was there. You could kind of see it through the noise, but you couldn't play back one and synchronize it to another video to overlay it to match the video up. So I came up with the idea. I said, well, I have this prompting system with these beam splitters. So I brought in a beam splitter teleprompting system with a CRT that takes took standard composite video, and then I put it in front of another monitor so that you could superimpose both monitor images on top of each other. We registered that, and each one received a video image, one live from the camera and one from the video playback, and synchronized them so that we could line things up for the motion control backup. And because there was so much hash coming in from one, it didn't matter because we were superimposing them optically with a beam splitter. And it saved the day. It saved the production. And we didn't have to go back and hire a different motion control system in order to do the compositing.
90% of the time, it's not the stuff that solves problems on sets. It's the brains behind the stuff. Good job. Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California, USA is here with us. With AI still a ways away from being production ready, do YouTubers now have an entertainment tool that Hollywood can't use and therefore are able to peel off an audience that Hollywood may not get back?
Alex, what do you think?
I don't think YouTube needs AI to peel time away from viewers that would potentially be watching Hollywood things. They're doing that by themselves. So the AI may help them. I still think that AI, for the most part, of being like a core production tool, is probably still a little farther away. I watch a lot of AI videos in the morning when I'm biking about, I'm tracking video very closely, and so I'm watching like what the different generators do and how they put them together. And what I would say is that they do things that in an isolated, like, look at this clip, looks amazing, but look at this clip inside of a large scene with actors that has consistency over an entire movie or a show or whatever. Like I don't know if that's really, and would it be something that people would actually pay for? Not sure. We're still pretty far away. I'm not saying that we won't get there, but I'm saying that we're still pretty far away, even if a YouTuber wanted to do it. Now, what I will say is that there's a bunch of hilarious things. One of my favorite right now is people take scenes from movies and they make them all babies, like little toddlers. They all look like the actors, but they're toddlers. I don't know, and then they have them do the scene, which I don't know why it's so funny, but it's funny. So anyway, so the problem they really have, I think the real challenge that Hollywood has is not that they're going to produce production that looks like Hollywood. It's they're going to produce so much content that we just enjoy and think is funny. It's just that we're watching less video. Now, I think that what that drives Hollywood towards is that the next, and we talked about this over the weekend, but the future is really not going to be, there's not going to be a lot of schlocky TV or schlocky streaming. It's all going to be pretty expensive streaming, and then there's going to be YouTube. But you can't put out low quality kind of, I'm going to fill my time. If I want to fill my time, I've got TikTok and YouTube. If you have destination, I want to see this. I just got my son and I don't know, we watched like three or four Andors in a row last night because it's getting near the end. We're near the end. Don't say anything yet. I haven't seen the last one. But we just couldn't stop watching. We're like, I gotta watch the next one. That's the kind of stuff that's the future. Things that are kind of cheap and okay, there's probably no room for that anymore. And that's one of the reasons I think Hollywood is slowing down and everything's slowing down, is that they're not at $75,000 a minute. There's no market. At $250,000 and above a minute, there's still a market for it if you have the right writers and actors and so on and so forth attached.
Courtney?
Yeah, the way that, and it's progressing so fast, Alex, I've been watching some of the progression in AI video generation tools, and it has come light years ahead in just the last 6 months than it was for the last, 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And it's progressing at an exponential rate. And so I don't think it'll be very long. There's a lot of the tools now that have consistency, and you can develop a character and add an image in, and it'll base all of its image generation on that face and generate it in any situation. The problem is telling a story and, like you say, lip sync dialogue. There's some that are now doing it. It's brand new. But I think the first place that the AI-generated video is going to be used 100% is going to be in commercials, because commercials consist of a series of short vignettes. And usually most of the shots are not longer than 2 or 3 seconds long. And it's a great place to generate really appealing images that take you out of the boring show that you were watching into the miracle of a commercial. that you hate and skip over quickly. Yeah, in order, they have to do something visually interesting to maintain your attention and not skip over it. So that's why these fantastic images are going to be used in commercials where AI can be applied easily and without people noticing. Because by the time you're going, hey, did that guy have 6 fingers? He's gone. That shot is over with. And you have to slow it down and freeze frame it to realize, oh, this was generated with AI. And it's
never heard anyone use the phrase "the miracle of a commercial" before, so that was new to me today.
Hey, I make my living in the advertising industry.
Not saying they're not valuable. I've done the same thing. I'm just saying I've never heard anybody articulate it that way. Alex.
And it doesn't mean that it won't start eating into things. Something we've talked about a lot. Amazon announced that they were opening up for Audible.com the AI narration. So now it's just a click, and it like for a supplier, it's just a click to have everything done there. And I do think that I think that that's going to be challenging. There's a great a monologue by a TikToker who does voiceovers. And her name is, the channel name is KDI Merc, MERC. And you'll see that one probably relatively recent because she was talking about it. But she just, she talked about how it was really interesting that she talked about every innovation leads to the displacement of artisans. Like when the printing press came out, you no longer needed scribes. When you could make a bowl with a machine, you no longer needed people to make bowls by hand. And she just talked about this, this thing where we're killing off, and paying attention to what's lost, but knowing that this is what's been happening for 1,000 years. Is that there's this, as things get automated. Now, I do think, and I was thinking about this because I watched this yesterday morning or whatever, and I do think that there's going to be more of a draw towards handmade things. And I think that because that's going to be seen as special. And so I think that there, these things that feel a little bit more organic. I think we see this sometimes in TikTok and YouTube where something that's overproduced with all the tools that could be used doesn't really get as much traction as something that feels like it's kind of crafted. And so I think that it's going to be an interesting thing to do. So I think, because like, for instance, a bowl that Cindy makes means something more than something that comes out of a machine, and I think that, but I think it's important for people to know that it's happening. If I saw, know that what that looks like and what that, the organic nature of that process, that creates a certain value to it. And I think it feels different. I mean, I definitely think that if I picked up a bowl that Cindy made and I picked up a bowl that I bought that is wood, that from something, I'm going to feel the difference in the quality, in what that looks like. But sometimes it takes time to have a refined eye to know the difference, at the same time. Because I know when I went to Zimbabwe, there was all this curio, what they call curio. It's all on the side of the road, and it's all these little stone sculptures. And I was ready to buy a whole bunch of it. And the person I was with was like, well, you're going to be here for a couple of weeks. Don't buy anything until the last couple of days. Just look at stuff and everything else. And as I looked at lots of it every day, because it was everywhere, my eye slowly tightened in on noting the difference between the craftsmen and the people who were just knocking out pieces of stone. But it took a little while to do that. So I think it's just a matter of education as well as people understanding what the difference is.
I keep seeing in grocery stores things like artisanal tomatoes, so I think we got hope for both sides. We are over time, actually. I was surprised. That last topic, we could have gone on for another 15 minutes, I'm sure, and had a lot of people who wanted to get in there, but I'm sensitive to the back-end crew. Everybody's got lives that they do beyond this, so we're not going to go too long here today. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for being here. Bring that question back tomorrow, Pedro, because I really want to dig into it because that's interesting to me too. Thank you so much for being a part of the Office Hours community. For those of you who understand how the show works, we really do require on the three great constituencies here. All of you who are watching the show, you are producers who add the questions in and drive the show. Thank you so much for your participation here every single day. To the panelists who show up to add their expertise without compensation of any kind, we just want to try to help share as much knowledge as possible. Thank you to everybody who shows up here in these little boxes every day and makes this show possible. And to the incredible back-end crew, the technologists and experts and just people who are willing to put in their time trying to make this happen every single day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The Teletraversal today, that's 32,000 miles, 51,000 kilometers, 252 million bananas for scale. I don't know if they're artisanal bananas or plastic bananas, but they're bananas for scale in any case. Thank you all for watching. We will see you right here tomorrow morning. Thanks. Bye.
Bill, it's for those of us in the voiceover business, time to take up basket weaving. Yes.
It's going to be interesting.
Close, it's a mild matter toolbox. Open, it's a Micro Machine USA.
Is that me? Did you record? Oh my God.
No, that was Micro Machines. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Jason,
I got to go back and watch today's show and see how that time compression messed with me.
If it had been Sunday, the TD would have put your banana in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. I don't think they have that kind of control on the weekdays.
Yes, we've got some bananas. Thank you all. See you all tomorrow.
See him.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
My bananas had been equally represented properly. So all good. I would really just do it for fun.
See you all tomorrow.
So backing up. A truck. You're Spanish.